Hello, this is Sarah Brash. Welcome back to my channel. So, I want to do a video about a very tragic, very sad occurrence, and I'm sure most people are probably already aware about the incident. And a Yale graduate student was shot and killed in New Haven on the Saturday evening, which was February 6th. And it's just awful. It couldn't be more awful. It's just horrible. So his name was Kevin Jiang. I believe that's how it's pronounced, Jiang. He was in the School of the Environment. He was a forestry student. He was a U.S. Army vet. He was 26 years old. He was just about to turn 27. He had just been engaged like a week prior. He was a member of the National Guard. He was a very active member in the Trinity Baptist Church. And this occurred in the neighborhood in New Haven called East Rock. And that is a neighborhood that is very popular with Yale graduate students to live in, to rent apartments. Apparently, Kevin did not live in East Rock, but his fiancée did. And this is near a very popular pizza establishment called Modern Pizza. And the Trinity Baptist Church, where he was a very active member, was nearby. And he lived with his mother, I guess, and they lived in West Haven, very close to New Haven. And she moved to Connecticut, to West Haven, to be with her son while he was in graduate school at Yale in the School of the Environment. So he seems to have just been an absolutely wonderful person, and it's just completely a horrendous tragedy, and my heart breaks for his family, and I can't even imagine how devastated his mother and his fiancé both are, and my heart goes out to them. So what happened was a bunch of the neighbors, it happened in East Rock, I guess on Lawrence Street between Nash and Nichols Streets, and a bunch of the neighbors heard multiple gunshots, and so they called 911. A ton of people called 911, and apparently people saw the shooters speed away in a shiny new black car, but it wasn't clear, at least it wasn't clear in any of the public statements that were made by either the Yale administration or by the Yale campus police or by the New Haven Police Department, if anyone actually saw the perpetrators, saw the shooters. It wasn't clear, but I guess people did see them speed away in a new shiny black vehicle, which I guess was initially described as a sedan, but I guess it might have been a GMC Terrain. Those were the reports that I was seeing. So anyway, Kevin's body, it seems that Kevin died of his gunshot wounds before the paramedics even arrived. And Kevin's body was found lying in the street next to his Prius, and it sounds like he was already dead by the time. It's hard not to get emotional when you're talking about it. So it sounds like he was already dead when the paramedics arrived on the scene, and apparently there was damage to the rear of his vehicle. So the thought was that perhaps a car crash had precipitated, an altercation or verbal altercation between the persons in the other car and Kevin, and perhaps it became violent, and then obviously the other person or persons had a gun and they shot Kevin. Now, there have been some reports that Kevin may have been targeted. I don't know what that means. Some people were saying that he maybe even had been targeted for his views, He was a devout Christian. He was obviously an Army vet, a member of the National Guard. So I can guess that perhaps his views leaned more conservative, more right. It's just a guess. I don't know. But it's really scary. It's really scary to think that that's a possibility. Now, New Haven is not a safe place. I think everyone already knew that. There's a lot of crime. There's a lot of gun violence. There's a lot of violence. And is this the fault of Yale? I think at least in part, yes. I think it's a travesty. I think it's a crime that the home city of one of the richest institutions in the world is in such a sorry state, is so economically depressed. If you have an economically depressed community, of course you're going to have crime, and you're going to have violence, and you're going to have gun violence. Okay, and obviously these problems have escalated in recent times during COVID. Everyone is struggling so much economically, financially, and so gun violence is up. I guess there's already 6 homicides in New Haven since the beginning of the year. And on this weekend, when Kevin was gunned down in the street, there were a couple of other incidents where apparently, I guess, I don't know exactly, is it just all New Haven public schools? The superintendent, apparently, he was home with his family. I guess this happened on Friday night, and people shot at his house. Like, just shot at his house in the evening when he was inside with his family. And thank goodness no one was hurt. There was just damage to the house. But that happened. And then apparently there was also an armed robbery of a New Haven public school teacher as well. I don't remember. That was either Friday or Saturday night. Or actually, I think it might have been Friday morning when she was arriving at work and she was just getting out of her car, and the person stole her car, and then the car was later found elsewhere in New Haven. So New Haven's not a safe place. And so, of course, this is a horrific tragedy that has happened. And my heart goes out to Kevin's family. And of course, this has a huge impact on me emotionally. I'm very affected by this because of everything that's happened to me. And I believe that this probably, very likely, is the end of Black students for disarmament at Yale, because I think it's clear to everyone, to the whole world at this point, that New Haven is not a safe place. And unfortunately, there does need to be a campus police department, and unfortunately, they do need to be armed. And so Yale President Peter Salovey made statements over the past couple days since Kevin's killing, saying that his top priority is to keep the Yale community, the Yale students, the Yale faculty, the Yale staff, the Yale administrators safe. Well, if he's really serious about wanting to keep Yale students safe, then he needs to finally tell the truth about the Living or Napping While Black hate crime hoax and save my life. And save my life. Or he doesn't actually care about keeping Yale students safe. And I have no qualms about just saying that. And that's just a fact. And I also want to remind people that in 2018, after I was vilified on a global scale for calling the non-emergency helpline of the Yale campus police, as I had been repeatedly instructed to do by the Yale administration and by Yale campus police chief Rennell Higgins. There were 2 other incidents in 2018 where Yale students called either Yale campus police or Yale campus security because they discovered sleeping stranger persons of color in the common rooms of their dorms. So they called Yale campus police, they called Yale campus security. What happened to those students? Nothing. Why? Because that was a perfectly reasonable way to respond to that situation. And it doesn't mean that they were trying to get the people arrested, and it doesn't mean, and one of the persons who was discovered sleeping in a common room of a Yale dorm claimed to be a Yale student. Okay? Nothing happened to those students. Why? Because that was a completely reasonable way to respond to the situation. New Haven is not a safe place. And just because they called Yale campus security or Yale campus police doesn't mean that they were trying to get the people killed. It doesn't mean that they were trying to get them arrested. It doesn't mean that they were trying to get them in trouble. They were just calling for help, which is exactly what the Yale campus police has always told everyone to do and what they told me to do repeatedly. Not just during spring 2018 when I was being terrorized in my isolated Yale dorm room, but during my entire tenure at Yale, since fall 2014. And I was also told in spring 2018 to call the Yale campus police anytime for any reason by Provost Stephanie Spangler and by Yale campus police chief Rennell Higgins via Provost Stephanie Spangler. And Chief Higgins perjured himself in front of the Connecticut Freedom of Information Act Commission. Perjured himself by making it seem like, of course, they were responding to my call to the non-emergency helpline, by the way, as me reporting a crime, as me asking for them to come like a SWAT team to kill a Black person. That's what he basically told the Connecticut Freedom of Information Act Commission. He was lying. He knew that I wasn't calling for that. I even said to the person who answered the phone, the non-emergency helpline of the Yale campus police, I said, I don't know. I don't know if they're a Yale affiliate. I don't know if they're a resident. I don't know if they're a student. I don't know. But even if they are a resident and a student, they can't sleep in that room. They can't use that room as a sleeping accommodation. It's a violation of Yale housing regulations. And if that is the case, they need to go back to their dorm room to sleep, to go to bed for the night. It's exactly what I said to them. So Chief Higgins is a liar. He's an evil liar and a fraud, and he perjured himself in front of the Connecticut Freedom of Information Act Commission. So anyway, that's basically what I wanted to say. Also, just that I was targeted and ostracized by the Yale administration and by the Yale student body as well since my first year in the PhD program because of my civil libertarian views, which were deemed anti-woke. And because I stood up for the federal civil rights of an evangelical Black man during my first year in the PhD program and philosophy at Yale, who was our only person of color job candidate for a tenure track assistant professor position. And that's why I was ostracized. That's why I was widely known and despised across campus. So it really is frightening to me to think that Kevin Gian might have been targeted for his more conservative views. And also, I literally had to flee Yale's campus for my life while being taunted by a mob. After May 8, 2018, I had to immediately move into a part of the dorm, the Hall of Graduate Studies, that was under construction. My one advisor had to go get cash for me to pay my Uber driver because I couldn't go out in public on campus because I would have been attacked. And while I was waiting for my Uber driver to come pick me up to take me to Brooklyn to my surrogate dad's house, where I immediately went into hiding, I was taunted by a mob. I was seen on the street waiting for my Uber driver, and they recognized me and they approached me and they were saying disgusting things to me, and it was terrifying, and yelling at me, and it was terrifying. So it's really terrifying to me to think that Kevin was targeted and there was a suggestion. Maybe it was just a road rage incident, but it does not seem to have been random. And it's really it's quite terrifying to me. But anyway, so yeah, it's a really horrible tragic thing that happened, and I hope that they find the shooters and they bring them to justice, and my heart goes out to his family. It's awful. So anyway, thank you so much for listening to me. I love you all so much for all of your kind words, and your support mean the world to me. All right, I'll have all of my fundraising links below. Please support me so that I can stop Yale and stop them from getting one more innocent person killed, and I can stop the moral outrage industry and stop the fake news press. All right, everybody take care. Have a great night.